Hey there, you magnificent rural rock star. I'm Emily, and you're officially on notice. Your dreams, they're about to get an upgrade bigger than a combine at the county fair. Buckle up, Buttercup, because the Ignite and Grow Micromind is rolling into town. Think 6 months of clarity on your goals, like a roadmap sprinkled with glitter and good vibes. Think sisterhood deeper than a Sunday potluck with women who get your dirt roads and dust devils. Think confidence so high, Dolly Parton herself is going to be starstruck. The Ignite and Grow Mastermind is a safe space for wild dreams and wilder laughter, where negativity goes to die and support blossoms like a Texas bluebonnet field come spring. We're talking bi-weekly calls fueled by my own personal brand of Hype Girl Magic, a digital workbook overflowing with juicy prompts, and a community of like-minded small-town movers and shakers who want to see you win. Now, I know what you're thinking. Emily, I'm so busy. I'm juggling kids and chores and maybe even a herd of stubborn cows. I hear you. These calls are virtual, so join from your tractor cab, your kitchen table, heck, even the beach if you gotta. Just don't forget the sunscreen. All we ask is commitment, respect for your fellow queens, and a willingness to chase your goals like a cheetah after a juicy antelope. This ain't for the faint of heart, though. We're talking sisterhood, grit, and a sprinkle of that special something that makes rural women unstoppable. So if you're ready to ditch the doubt, embrace alignment, and build a life that makes you want to yodel from the rooftops, then honey, you're in the right place. Click the link in today's show notes, grab your boots, and let's get this rodeo rolling. Ignite and Grow Micromind, because rural women deserve to shine brighter than the starlit prairie sky.
Marriage is supposed to be 50-50. Screw that. That's horrible advice.
It's terrible.
Marriage
advice.
is 100%, 0%, 75-25, 50-50,
Ever in between.
60-40, and it's constantly fluctuating and changing.
Hi, friend. Welcome to Gather and Growth, a show created for passionate, growth-focused rural women like you. From mindset work and building strong habits to exploring the unique joys and challenges of living rural, this is a show to leave you feeling joyful, inspired, and a little less alone. Together, we're on a journey of reaching for the most confident, healthy, and authentic version of ourselves, and I'm forever grateful to have you by my side. Whether you're currently running on a back road, shuffling kids to town, hopping along for a tractor ride, or 3 loads deep into folding laundry, grab yourself a nice coffee and let's dive in. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Gather and Growth. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest who just so happens to be the love of my life. Welcome to Gather and Growth, Andrew.
Am I supposed to say something now?
Yeah. Say hi.
But I already know you.
It is the 100th episode, and this has been many years in the making. I have talked to Andrew. I won't even say aggressively tried, but I've talked to Andrew on 3 different occasions about coming on the show. The first time, I had a lot of questions about what it was like. Being married to me sounds weird, but being married to someone who is goal-oriented, business, yada, yada, yada. Okay, the second time is after we went and did our goal setting workshop. We were going to debrief and talk about that, and then didn't, and then found out I was pregnant.
Yeah, that's literally the conclusion of that goal setting workshop.
Yeah. And then we were going to talk after our youngest was born about what that experience was like. And then we didn't, and then our house flooded.
It's true.
So here we are. The 100th episode felt like a good time to sit him down. We have been with our feral children all day long. What feels like all week. We are like on the in-between between school and like child care for the summer starting.
Yeah, we don't have a routine.
Oh my God. It just feels like chaos.
And it shows.
And it shows. So these children are with their grandparents.
They're watching a movie.
I'm certain they're watching a movie. And so here we are in the basement.
I think my mom like noped out of that.
Rightfully so. Last week on our way home from Kentucky, I put in my question box, I'm bringing Andrew on the podcast. What do you want to know? And so that's where we're going to start today.
Oh, you weren't asking me what I want to know.
Oh, I mean, I am going to ask you what you want to know the entire time. Actually, let's start. Here is what
Look at all. Is that all the list?
Yeah, there's quite the list.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, we might not get through it all.
Okay,
but there's some ideas. Okay, Andrew is also a faithful listener of Gather and
Hopefully
Growth.
there's not a part 2.
Could be. We could go on for so long that this is a 2-part episode.
Maybe the 200th episode.
Just save it. What is it like going to be like 2 years from now?
Still chaos.
Tell us about yourself, and perhaps the context would be helpful. What got you here today? And maybe like, what is our story from your perspective?
Okay. So I'm born and raised on a 5th generation family farm in Western Illinois. And after high school, I did not want to take that over initially. And so I ran away from home like everybody else does and joined the military. Because, I mean, we had a war going on with Iraq and Afghanistan. So I wanted to go be a part of that and kind of build and create and form my own version of myself and not the version that you have in high school. So I went and did that first. I was in the military for 5 years, got to kind of separate myself from my parents and everything that I knew and create my own person. Then after college, since the military pays for your education, I went to college, which is not something I really intended on doing because I didn't know what I wanted to do, which is also the reason why you joined the military. All I knew is I wanted to get away from where I was. I went down to Carbondale, which is Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I had
someone commented and said, please discuss how Carbondale is in real life.
Carbondale is its own universe.
It's something like that.
They call it the Dirty Dale, and for good reason. It's a mixture of a lot of different stereotypes.
So you found yourself in Carbondale.
So I was in Carbondale. I actually moved in with a friend from high school who went to college down there, and he was still down there. He had a job. So I moved in with him, and next thing I know, you walked into my apartment.
This is so true.
It is.
And that's where our story ends.
That's where I stop and you can pick up any more.
So I walk in to Andrew's apartment wearing, I don't know, yoga pants.
We are going to go.
We may as well go there. I feel like it is a crucial part of the story.
Okay. You were at a horse barn.
Uh-huh.
You were in horse riding shoes or you had them
boots.
With you?
Yeah.
Okay. Were they cowboy boots? Anyway, you're covered in horse poop.
Mm-hmm.
Smelled like a horse barn.
Mm-hmm.
Wearing yoga pants. Tie-dye t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
A camo hat.
Mm-hmm.
You look like you just got off a very long bus ride with a lot of people.
So the night before I met Andrew, I had been in Maine for the summer working at an all-girls camp, like totally Parent Trap style. Like if you imagine the Lindsay Lohan movie, it was literally filmed at the camp next door to us. So when he says I got off a long bus ride, I quite literally flew in the night before after being at camp.
And you came down to help move your brother in to school.
Mm-hmm.
We were both freshmen at the same time.
Yeah, except for you were an old man.
I was older, but it was a lot of fun telling everyone that you were dating a freshman.
Mm-hmm. As I was graduating.
As you were graduating.
For long distance for a little bit. Because I'm finishing student teaching.
Yep.
You're living in Carbondale. You actually, I think it's important to share. You went into Carbondale fully expecting to live the college kid life.
Yeah.
And instead you found me.
I mean, I did grow up watching like Van Wilder. That was what I thought college was.
Yeah. And instead you got married halfway through.
Yeah. Even though some of my professors even was telling me don't do it. Granted, they didn't know who I was or my story and how old I was. But I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting married this summer. And they're like, what? Don't do it. See me after class so they could talk me out of it.
Ironically, we're going to one of those professors' weddings this week.
Yeah, we're going to his wedding this weekend.
Okay, so how did you know that I was the one?
I don't know. You were different than everybody else.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so for context, we were long distance for a semester. I was in about 4 hours away.
Yep.
Student teaching.
We talked on the phone every night for like 4 hours.
Which was the best thing for the beginning of a relationship.
Correct.
Because it
made us be friends.
Well, yeah, it forced us to have to talk about things. We couldn't.
Yeah. We couldn't just get by with being with a other group of people. And
yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So we got to know each other really fast. I told him a few months later that I was moving down to Carbondale.
Which freaked me out.
Yeah. But it was either that or move into my parents' basement, which would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
Actually, a disaster.
Yep.
So my boyfriend and my brother were both in Carbondale. And so I moseyed on down there and the rest is history.
To the Dirty Dale.
Dirty Dale. I call it my college 2.0 era because I went to a small private liberal arts school, nerd school. It was great. I loved it. Carbondale is the opposite of that. So I got to have college 2.0 with big kid money. Granted, I was a teacher, but at the time, it felt great. So how did you know you wanted to pursue farming? You said that you did not want to do that when you left at 18.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I had to leave in order to know, to be able to turn around and look and see everything that I was missing and everything that I wanted and find out who I was and see, the things that I enjoyed and my morals and my yada, yada, yada. And looked back and said, oh, it was all right there.
Like, I actually think pretty soon into us dating, you were like, listen, if we're going to be serious, I'm moving back to the farm. So either you are doing that with me or like, I'm not interested in being in a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And I was like,
you said it was like a job interview for like the first couple months. Are you coming back? If you're not, then bye.
Yeah, like I had to decide immediately. And I know someone that listening to this is laughing because it was basically the same thing for them.
Because that was, it was non-negotiable.
Yeah. I remember the first time I came back to the farm. I wanted you to like bring me home. I made you like meet me like 30 minutes away to drive me there because I did just want to like roll up at your parents' house.
So dramatic.
Were you scared?
No, because whenever you met my parents in Panera, what town was that? Was that Bloomington?
Bloomington, yeah.
Yeah, I already knew then. And I don't know how much longer the difference was.
Yeah, so I feel like it was like the same month.
Same month? Yeah, so I already knew. It didn't matter.
Okay, but like I would say you are not the average farmer. How did you know that you wanted
the average farmer is like 60 years old.
Okay, valid.
Okay.
But as soon as we moved back, which is, gosh, what? 8 years
16.
ago now? 8 years ago, last week, actually.
16.
You have always done things like a little bit differently in a way that challenges the status quo. Where did that come from?
Where we live, there's a lot of really good flat black ground. And unfortunately, my ancestors could not buy the good flat black ground. So we got the very variable rolling ground on the outskirts of the flat black ground. And doesn't take too many rains to watch all that dirt go down the hill, and your dirt that used to be black is now tan, and then the tan is now, gosh, whatever every other color we have. We got like some yellow. I've actually seen like green dirt, green and blue clay. Oh, anyway, so you watch it all go downhill or up in the air, and so yeah, cover crops was a huge thing. From an outsider looking in, not saying, oh, this is the way we've always done things, because I grew up running the tractor and running the disc, and most kids when you're growing up, you're running the tillage equipment and the auger cart and whatever. But and I did all that. But when you get a chance to leave and step back and take a look at it and you see all that stuff, hey, there's chances that we can do some things better. And so, I mean, that wasn't even anything that I was influenced at college or anything at all, because I was interested in that prior to getting an ag degree. I actually hated how much they talked about cover crops and they shoved it down your throat at college. Cover crops for us, just from a soil erosion standpoint, was massive.
Yeah.
And then it takes you just a few years of doing it and keep looking around, and you see more benefits and more benefits and more benefits and different things. And so you get different results because you looked at things differently. Now, I'm not saying, but I am saying if we had that flat black farm ground, just a few that I would like that my ancestors would have bought, I would have definitely had a different side of the story.
But I think it's also important to say, like, your grandpa did a lot of this stuff. So.
Yeah, my grandpa did a lot of things. He definitely thought outside the box because he had to. Yeah, he did a lot of these things and he failed at a lot of these things. And that's the things that my dad remembered when he was growing up, was all the failures. And so it was really hard coming back in and be like, I want to do this, this, and this. And dad's like, I did that in the 80s. I did that in the 90s. And this failed and everything failed. And here's all your problems. Like, oh, okay, well, let's try it again. Dad's like, why do you want to do that? That sounds horrible.
I think you bring up something that a lot of families I know struggle with, which is just that intergenerational dynamic. And you mentioned specifically like coming home from college or coming off a different farm and having different ideas. Like, what has that process look like for you? And what advice would you give someone maybe starting that conversation?
Oh, it was hard. I mean, multiple years of, I think my dad and I both leaving discussions, wanting to slam our heads through the wall. We never really got into it with each other, but we both walked away very frustrated from conversations. And it took us several years. Obviously, I wanted to do more no-till and more cover crops, and luckily, we had already purchased a few pieces of ground, and so I was able to do what I wanted to do on my own ground, and Dad was able to kind of do what he wanted to do on his ground, and we were able to see each other and kind of watch and learn and see things. And so that helped. That kind of gave me my free reign, and that also because it affected me and only
Mhm.
me. And it was my ground and he didn't have any say.
And some of it worked really well and some of it totally didn't. Let us be clear
yes.
here.
No, yeah. Some of it was just disasters, but that's all learning. Really what I think saved us, my dad and I's relationship, saved the farm, is probably strip till corn. We were in two separate corners on a lot of discussions and a lot of things that we wanted to do and things, how we saw and understand how to grow corn, grow soil and, prevent soil erosion and all this stuff. But strip till corn was like the perfect marriage or like the compromise. Mm-hmm. And like we both kind of got what we wanted and we both kind of didn't get everything that we wanted. And then as we got into strip till corn more and more, it was like, okay, now we've kind of like dipped our foot into it a little bit. Oh, look at all these other benefits. Oh, and then we just built a lot onto strip till corn. So now there's not even a discussion. There is nothing else. No, I mean, there's not anything else, but like there's no animosity. There's no adversity. We found something that we both compromised on. It did everything that we both needed. And after that, it's really been smooth sailing since then. Mm-hmm. I've kind of lessened up a little bit about pushing dad to do things and dad has lessened up about pushing me to do things. And so you can tell somebody what you know until you're blue in the face, but when it's their money in their pocketbook, and the same thing can be said from my dad's perspective. He can tell me all the reasons why I'm going to fail, but it's my pocketbook and it's my experience to learn. So you kind of just got to let him go. I think dad probably just realized, I mean, we had a couple failures there and dad didn't even say much. He just said, so what did you learn? And that was, you got to sit down and say, that sucked. Mm-hmm. And you had to get over it. Yeah. Move forward.
Something I've always admired about you in the professional aspect is like just that willingness to try new things and learn from failures and not just give up, but okay, well, what if we try this? And what if we do that? And that definitely, I think, comes from your Enneagram 5 side of collecting information and wanting to figure it all out. But that has really influenced my entrepreneurial journey in what it looks like to step outside the box and be okay with not having everyone understand what I'm doing or why I'm doing it and just trusting that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Okay, so switching gears.
Okay.
I want to talk about being a dad.
It's hard.
It is hard. Someone asked, what is something you didn't expect in fatherhood? And how have you grown through it?
Well, one thing I didn't expect was my kids would end up coming out like you. But I just assumed that our kids would come out like how we are as human beings today.
Oh, that's a good distinction. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would just say that you were a handful as a child while I was a perfect angel. Obviously.
As in you were conditioned to complacency. Not complacency. Conditioned to obedience.
I was a perfect child.
Perfect. You were.
I was an only child.
You were an only child.
Also need to clarify on that.
Only child.
And you were a handful. That's been told to me by your uncles and aunts and everybody in your family while we were dating. Just so you know, she was a handful when she was growing up. And I just didn't expect that our kids would turn out like you when you were a kid with your brain. I just expect them to be my carbon copies of me. Now they look more like me.
They are copy and paste you, actually.
But they don't have my brain.
That's true.
I don't know. I guess I never thought about that. I just assumed.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to be like a blend and they're going to turn out to be like a little 20-year-old version of me. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's not true.
Yeah. And so I think something that a lot of parents struggle with is when you are parenting, it really forces you to confront a lot of
your own childhood dramas.
Yeah. The pieces of your childhood.
Yeah.
And your spouses.
Yeah.
And it's like the things that aggravate you the most or trigger you, whatever phrase you want to use, are typically the things
that you weren't allowed
that you struggled with or you weren't allowed to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I see it all after the fact. Like, oh, I just did that. And this triggers me or this upsets me because I wasn't allowed to do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Especially when the kids talk back to me. That really, I've been getting better about it.
Yeah.
But when they have to have the last word.
Yeah. I imagine you weren't allowed to have the last word.
No, that's you though. You have to have the last word. That is all you.
It's true.
And not me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one example too.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm really proud of how intentional we've been in parenting.
Yeah, that's hard.
And you have, I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but you have said that, like, especially in the beginning, I led the way on that.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was kind of hard and kind of easy at the same time. Like, unfortunately, when most people get married, you kind of like always revert back to your own childhoods and like your own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I expected things to be done differently. And I knew that some things would be different because I, of course, married you and like, and we were going to have our own life. I'm like, yeah, you understand that. But like in times of stress, you still revert back to what you know and what in baseline expectations. Yeah, that was very difficult, different. Now you leading, like when you were pregnant, you like learned a whole bunch, you read a whole bunch of books.
Mm-hmm.
You really kind of started to like deal with how you wanted to be pregnant, how you wanted to give birth, how you wanted to kind of raise our kids and stuff like that. And that was all on your mind. My mind was all on the farm because we had bought one farm in 2016. We bought another farm in 19. No, 19. Anyway, we bought a third farm, bought a house. Like I was doing all this stuff. I was getting back to the farm. And so like that was where all my energy and focus and effort and everything was. And yours was going in the opposite direction. And so it was easy for me to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're just taking care of the kids. And then it's like you're taking care of the kids. And then I come home and I'm tired and you're like, here, you have to be a part of this too. And I'm like, but I just worked all day.
And I'm like, hey, me too.
Well, yeah, but going back to expectations when you're stressed out, things are just anyway. So yeah, you led the way on that, which was in the beginning was easy because I just let you. But then your way was so vastly different than anything that I had seen in my life. And that was hard. And sometimes it still is hard. We're on our third kid now, and it's all kind of starting to work out. Maybe by like the seventh kid, we'll just be fine.
Please don't manifest that.
I'm not at all. Not after today. Not after this week. No.
No, but I think you bring up a really good point of just like what unspoken expectations we had of ourselves and of each other in the first couple of years of being married, especially when we were back on the farm and especially once we started having kids.
Yeah, very true.
Like I remember the first summer after our son was born, we lived here about a year. Like you were doing all the farming things, trying to build all the things, prove all the things, whatever. And I'm home with this baby, which I'm so grateful for, and also severely struggling with postpartum anxiety and rage that I did not even had a name for. I just thought I was crazy.
I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah. I mean, all I'd ever heard anyone talk about is like the baby blues. And I'm like, I'm not sad. I'm furious all the time. And you were gone all the time.
Yeah. There's so much to do.
So much to do.
Yeah. And it never ends.
And I was like, I love you. And I understand that planting and harvest has to be this way. But I did not sign up for you to never be home.
Yeah. And I think you like had that conversation with me probably like 8 times and none of it ever sunk in. I was like, oh, yeah, well, this is just life.
Oh my gosh. The number of times I'm in a Farm Wife Facebook group and people are like, oh, yeah, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so mad.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
But that was not an easy process. It's not just as easy as me being like, hey, be home. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that
was like years of us figuring that out.
Yeah.
So what shifted? Like what helped you understand the changes that you wanted to make as the way you showed up in our home or as a dad or as a partner?
I don't know when anything actually shifted per se. I think I came home more probably out of in the evenings, tried to be home in the evenings a little bit more, even though the evenings were so rough when we had really little kids. But I remember one time looking back and thinking and realizing that I really don't remember the first 2 years of our second kid's life. There's just things that I don't remember. We had bought in all these farms and we had this house and we were remodeling this house and then we were doing all this stuff, other stuff farming and we were blah, 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 blah. And I was sinking so much of my life going every direction. And I just don't remember coming home to the kids is like just coming home to like it's another job.
Oh, absolutely.
That is never ending.
Absolutely.
And so it's 10 times easier to just stick around and keep doing things and knocking stuff off to-do lists.
What I think was a really huge turning point for both of us was when I was at the Y and my summer camp season was like what you would equivalent to like harvest.
Yeah.
Where I was working at least 60-hour weeks.
Yeah.
And like physically could not leave because there was stuff that had to get done by the next morning. Like I had, 150 people plus parents relying on me to do something. I could not come home. It was past bedtime.
And I had the kids.
Yeah.
And then I had nothing but resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think for both of us, like I had a lot more empathy for like when you really cannot leave what you're doing. And you had a lot more understanding of what it feels like to be on the other side of that.
Yeah. When the swap shoes, right? Yeah. We kind of
like that was probably the best thing that happened to our marriage in terms of farming and whatnot.
Yeah. There's so much resentment though on both sides and not realizing what the other person's really going through.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because you just like fabricate your own assumptions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And not in a cruel way.
Yeah.
Like just in your own story and what you're doing and what your priorities are.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was also, I remember having conversations of just being like, you say that your family is the most important thing to you. And I'm not saying you specifically. I've talked about this with other women and, like you say like a faith, family, farm. But like it is farm, family faith.
So that the family can take over the farm and farm. Right. While there's just faith that binds everyone together.
Right. Or the kids never want to be a part of the farm because they have no relationship. And so I think just like bringing awareness and understanding around that was also like, the farm is always going to be here. The to-do list will literally never end. Like you are never done. But like what is done enough for the day? And I have managed this within myself too. Like I'm, Enneagram 3. No matter what has been hard at work, it has for a long time was easier than anything else in life.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I can do it. I can see the result. I can be praised for it. I can define my worthiness and enoughness through it. So I want to keep doing it. And so the thing about kids is...
Yeah, you can't... None of that is true.
Or it could be, but it's not better for anyone. No. And so I think that was something we both kind of went through in our own ways for a couple of years of just like figuring out what is actually important to us and where do we define all of that.
Yeah.
Something that comes up in masterminds and in calls all the time is like people asking what it was like for you when I started diving into the world of personal growth. So for anyone listening for the first time, my story is I was about 6 months postpartum with my second. So it's fall of 2019. And I realized I want to feel a different kind of way in my body. I have this baby girl now, and I don't necessarily even care what my body looks like. I just want to feel differently. And I want so desperately for my daughter. Gosh, I get emotional every time I talk about this. I want my daughter to have a different relationship with her body and her health than the one that so many of us were raised in the 90s or whatever. So that ignited...
You mean Pop-Tarts and Mountain Dew?
Yeah, right. God. That ignited a health journey that at the same time literally thrust me into the world of personal growth and development, which led down a whole different trajectory that ended me bringing me into the work that I'm doing here today, which we'll get more deeper into. But something I'm frequently asked is what was that experience like with you? What was hard about it? And then like what made you eventually come alongside me in it?
Initially, at first, like you were kind of like just reading books. It's like, okay, whatever, she's reading books, like doesn't matter. Girls can read. But
put on a sticker.
No, I mean like you read several books and like you weren't making any what I would say outward changes that affected me or affected our house.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You were making internal changes and like you were moving a direction, but it didn't really affect me. So it didn't really, whatever. And then I think when you started running, I was like, oh yeah, that's great. Cool. Go do that. And then you did that. And then I got stuck with the kids. And then you were going for longer runs. And then you're like a slow runner. And it's like
still a slow runner.
But it's just like, oh, you're going to be back. You're going to go for a mile run. Okay. So I was in the military. I know a mile run should be 7 miles. 7 minutes.
LOL.
7 minutes for a mile. Like, come on. Maybe 9 minutes if you're really going slow. No, you're like, oh, I walked and then I ran and then I walked back. Like, so warm up and cool down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you were gone for an hour with these two crazy kids. And it was just resentment, pure resentment. That was all kind of going back to that same time period that we were just talking about though, too. And so, yeah, I was very resentful of all this free time that you were getting to yourself that I couldn't do because I was trapped with two kids that I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go to the farm and work so I could go do things. I remember one time, I think we were cleaning the house and you were talking, you were much further along and you said something, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but like you were talking about like how you were on this journey and on this personal growth and like you were obviously going that direction. And I was like, that's fine for you. just leave me alone, let me go to the farm and work, like mode.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something like, I don't know if we're going to be married for much longer.
I said that?
Yeah.
Shit.
I was really mad. I remember because you were like cutting something up. You had a knife in your hand while you said it.
Of course.
You're probably, anyway, but like you were leading along the lines of like, we need to be on the same page. We need to have the same goals. If we're not going to be on the same page, then I don't know how much.
If we're not growing together, we're growing apart. Yeah. Basically.
And we were growing apart.
Yeah. I mean, this was like the pinnacle of us talking about all this resentment and frustration anyway.
Yeah. And I was just mad at you because I'm like, who do you think you are? Just coming in and think that you can tell me what to do. Like, your stuff is stupid and like it doesn't have any effect on my life. Just let me leave and go to the farm and work. Right?
Someone is nodding along going, wow, that's incredibly relatable.
Yes. So, I mean, I do remember that. And I think like every time you try to talk to me about it, I just dismissed it in my head.
Like shut down.
Yeah, shut down. Didn't want to have anything to do with it.
So what changed?
I don't know. I think that probably well, first of all, you working at the Y through COVID, and at the end of the Y, you were so unhappy. Yeah. Not necessarily the Y's fault, but just like placement in the time and where you were in your life. It ran its course. And life was really hard for both of us in all aspects, which was a very big thing for me to be like, how's this personal growth stuff working for you?
So salty.
There was a lot of resentment on both ends. That probably was around that same time that I realized that I didn't remember any of my kids' lives and realized that there was going to need to be a change because we were both incredibly unhappy with so many things. Not necessarily like just marriage, but just like with kids and with works and with life and money and
super overwhelming.
Everything. So I don't know. It clicked. I don't know what changed, but it did.
I remember a day.
I don't think you can go back and say, this is the time when you threatened me with a knife.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so dramatic. But I wish I could remember what year it was, but I was sitting in the chair where I typically work. At the time I was doing my business. So it was within the last 3 years. I remember you texted me. No, you sent me a Marco Polo from the semi.
Oh, you probably couldn't hear it very well.
No, but you were like, I get it. And I was like, you get what? And you were like, this whole thing. And I'm like, what is that even? What? I need some context here. And you were like, this whole personal growth thing. I see it. And like, how do I do it? You wanted like a 10-step plan.
Oh, well, at that point I was listening to podcasts in the semi hauling grain.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I think that if you would have said, here, you need to go read this book, I would have looked at that book and been like, and set it back down.
I think I probably had
you
been
had,
like,
you had.
go read this,
yeah.
especially in relationship to parenting and things like that.
And
been like, please read this, please read this, please read this.
And that did not fly for them. That just made me mad.
I know.
So I don't know. I think that I had to go find it myself, but obviously you had cracked all the shells and said, here you go. But you showing me didn't do anything. You telling me to do it made me mad.
Well, yeah, no, I don't think it was the showing. It was the telling. And then over time, it was the showing of like, okay, what's going on here? Yeah. She is changing. This is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I see other changes going on. Oh, you handled this situation with the kids so well, and I wish that I could do that. Well, how did you learn to do that? How do you have all this patience that I don't have?
Yeah.
And so then it was like, I don't ever think there was a light bulb moment. I think it was just gradual and over time.
Yeah.
Hauled a lot of grain and listened to a lot of podcasts. Well, I stopped listening to the radio when I hauled grain, and that I think has helped a lot.
We were coming home from a trip to Michigan, and we were looking at my Enneagram book, and you started asking questions. Cool. That was a huge moment, I feel like. That was big, yeah. And just helping us understand ourselves and each other.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good too. That was definitely when I was already starting to get on the like, oh, I'm curious to what you're learning. Yeah. Enneagram 5 deal. Oh, what are you learning about? Because I remember one time like you were at the Y and you like read this book. Was it Good to Great?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I have that book. Here you go. You can read it. Like, you want all my highlights? I'll tell you all these things I like about this book. And then when you're done, you can read the next book. It's like, How to Build Better Businesses. I can't remember how it is. I'm like, oh yeah, you're learning all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm just excited to see what you're learning about. And then you were reading a book like Girl Wash Your Face. And I was like, okay, that's definitely not a book I'm going to read.
Here we are.
So
what does personal growth look like for you today?
Wow. Are you ending the podcast?
No, I'm not ending.
Last question.
No, but I can save it if you want me to.
Oh, that was the only question I knew that you were going to ask me. Because that was the very last question that you ask everybody.
It is the question I ask everybody.
Are you at the bottom of your checklist?
No. Oh gosh, no. We still got plenty to go. Okay, so you talked about my last year or so at the Y.
Yeah, that was really hard. In context, we had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yes.
It was very hard.
It was very hard, and I had outgrown that position. But a lot of the women I work with, they themselves know that they've outgrown something and they're ready to make a change. And sometimes their spouse is the most resistant to it. Like, they can't see how burnt out and miserable they are. So, like, what were some of... Because you say, like, I went to Rural Rooted, and I came back and I was like, I'm ready to leave my job. And you're like, yeah, no, duh.
Yeah.
You knew before I did.
I knew way before you did, and I wanted to support you instantly to do it.
Yeah.
Because anything would be better than the hell that we were living in.
God, so dramatic.
No, life was just so hard, and anything would have been better than what we were living in. You were not happy at work. You were
burnt out,
frustrated. I was burnt out, frustrated, not only with farming, but also but just being home with the kids and taking care of this and that while you were gone doing things at your work. And you were coming home and you were burnt out from work, and you were burnt out coming home, and you were burnt out leaving the house. Like, we were just both completely burnt out.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I love businesses and I love different things and I'm okay with the risk because obviously we farm. So, like,
okay, this is a great question though.
Okay, but so you're like, oh, you went to this Rural Rooted thing, and I was like, I don't even know. Okay, how much money does it cost? Okay, you're gonna be gone this long. That means I have the kids for these couple of days. Like, great. Okay, whatever. Again, it still came from a place of resentment, but you came back and you're like, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm like, yes, thank goodness. Like, obviously, but you have been building towards that.
Yeah,
a little bit. In your mind, you had built towards it, and you kind of dropped a few hints. Like, yeah, but even I think that I want to try to do this, and I think I'd like to try to do that.
Like, even going into Rural Rooted, I was like, I don't know, maybe we'll start a pumpkin patch or do direct to consumer beef. I didn't even know that that's what it's called. I was like, we're gonna have cows and sell it.
Yeah.
I would be so miserable doing both those things. Like,
you would.
The idea of doing. Well, not even what I'm doing now, but what I jumped into doing, that didn't even cross my mind until I went to that retreat.
Yeah. And all I knew is that we needed a change. We needed to change so many things. Yeah. And so when you came home and you're like, I'm going to quit my job. And I said, yeah, I know. And I fully support you because I did, because we needed a change in our life.
Yeah.
A massive change. That was from you, but that was also from me. And that was also from the kids.
Yeah.
We needed to change in order to change our marriage. And we needed to change in order for our kids to not be the way that was just chaos. I mean, now we have different chaos, but it's very different.
Well, So what was that transition like? Because I think when people are considering change, whether it's starting a business, leaving a job, whatever, there's a lot of anxiety and fear of the unknown. So how did you find safety in that?
So the only thing that I needed from you was financials and insurance. Those are the two big things that farm wife is supposed to go and do, right? You need to bring in income. So that's our family to cover family living expenses. And you need to have health insurance. Researching health insurance, you can get
so many options.
There's multiple different options. Yeah. And so when I realized and I ran the numbers on health insurance, I was like, oh, shoot. Okay. Health insurance, that's covered. Check. Done.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not a big deal. All I needed it from you was to cover from financials. And I was like, oh, okay. So our family living expenses was X. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, so I can cover down, I can add this much to the family living expenses, and I can add a little bit more than what I was already allocating for family living expenses so that we can cover the lack of your family living expenses that you were providing. And I was like, okay, cool. So we're good for the first 6 to 8 months. And so I was like, okay, we're covered.
Yeah.
Go build the business, go do your thing. You don't have to worry about bringing in money until 8 months. But then at 8 months, I was like, hopefully you will have some income from this and that we can, maintain our family living expenses.
Yeah. I think we had said if this is not trending to work in 6 months, I will start considering another job. And then you were like, okay, fine.
Well, I think even 6 months is a pretty short time frame.
I'm not saying having replaced, but not even trending as feasibility.
Yeah.
Because I truly jumped into the deep end. I was not making a single dollar when I started my business.
No.
So it's not like I was doing both at the same time and was waiting for a certain point. It was just at the 6 month mark, is this casted to be feasible?
Yeah. You came home from Rural Rooted. You're like, I'm going to quit my job. I think 4 days later, you turn in your 2 weeks.
No, it was the next
day.
But I actually was there for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
That was super hard.
Then after that, you just had your first day at home that you were not working at the Y. And it's just
it was so weird.
Yeah, I think you did a bunch of house stuff and then sat down at a computer and was like, okay, now what do I do?
I don't know, I was like, what do I do with all the stuff that was in my office?
And so
it's like the first conversation Kylie and I like really had.
We even sat down and had a business plan. And I remember like you were like wrote down a business. We went to breakfast.
Yeah.
And I wrote down all this stuff. I'm like, just spew everything that's in your head. And I just wrote it all down and organized it so I could grasp what you're trying to do. And I remember looking at it and being like, I have no idea what any of this is.
I don't even know
how this is going to make money. I don't even know what any of this stuff is. And it's morphed and it's changed and it's done. But I said, I fully support you. Let's go. Let's do it. So I knew we were financially covered for at least 8 months. So I knew that we had almost a year for you to try to figure something out. Just let you run and go. And then like, I really wanted to be like a really big part of it and like help. But then I realized that our two brains don't work and mesh well together sometimes, especially on some things. So it's been really hard for me to not open my mouth and interject and try to help and guide and just let you figure it out.
Yeah, you're doing a really good job with my bookkeeping.
Hey, this has been a very long planting season. I can also knock your stuff out very quickly.
Yeah. Every 7 months.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, we have to talk about it for 3 hours and it takes me 3 hours to do it all.
Anyway.
Okay.
So how have you/we/I changed since I started my business?
I think we got over the resentment part affecting 100% of our lives. I'm always going to go back to that. There was so much.
Yeah.
I think when we had changed your job, you showed up differently around the kids and towards me and towards the house, because you had a change of environment, which instantly changed me and the kids. And so like it wasn't.
Well, it also gave our family a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah.
Like just me working from home and being able to be in control of my own schedule and life. I think that I take that for granted now. Like today theoretically was a work day.
Yeah.
I sat down to work at what? We sat down to record this podcast episode an hour ago.
Yeah. We both did so many things, but we never I went to the farm to grab tools.
Yeah.
And then bring tools back here to work on something here. But like,
yeah. I mean, I think it's just shown us a very different perspective on what life can look like.
Yeah.
And just like all of that stuff. Like, no wonder we were so burnt out and tired and overwhelmed. Like, it is a very hard thing to be a full-time employee and also do all the parent things.
Yeah.
And then try to like take care of yourself. Like,
no, there's no time.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. I still struggle with this, and I know you're going to give me a look for it, but like I still like to try to force a square peg through a round hole. When something doesn't work, you just hit it harder.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's what we were doing. And when you started your business, the square just got less square and more round. Or the hole got more square. I don't know, either way. Anyway, it just kind of all fell together. I still can never say like, this is the time, like this is the pinnacle, but I can say that things just got easier. And as things got easier, you're going to keep treading water in that traction.
Yeah.
I guess I stopped fighting my own preconceived notions a little bit more.
Around what?
What life is supposed to look like at home.
I think that like so much has changed since that time. And it's been both of us. Like we've said many times over the past couple of months, like how proud of us we are.
Yeah. Well, we both have changed.
Yeah.
Hey, so it's just like that conversation that I said about my dad and I moving to Striptail. We found compromise. We found the things that we both needed and got a little bit of what we wanted, but not. Well, I think we were able to leave some things for the other person. It's all compromise.
We both also got a lot healthier within ourselves.
Yeah.
Like the deeper I've gone in not just what started as personal growth, but really transitioned into healing, is like once you understand yourself more deeply, you just take a lot of things less personally.
Yeah.
I was just in a constant state of dysregulation, and it's very hard to make good decisions and like nurture the people that you care about when you are dysregulated. And so I think more than anything, like we have both healed a lot and found a lot of peace within ourselves, which then gives us a lot more grace and understanding with each other and our kids.
Beautifully said.
I think it was also a really interesting experience for you to watch me go through all that I did in therapy.
Yeah. You remember the first time you said, I'm going to go to therapy? You like cried.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand.
You didn't understand for a long time.
I didn't understand. Yeah. What are you talking about? What do you need therapy for?
Right.
Therapy's for weirdos.
I am also a weirdo, but yeah.
But yeah, like you should have like really bad trauma in your life that you can't get through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you need therapy for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, well, and I think you had assumed that I had worked through a lot of the stuff that I had needed to.
Yeah, but like your mind can work through a lot of things, but like your emotions and your body still holds on to a lot of stuff that you don't even know that your mind has been like, oh yeah, okay, check. But your body still holds on to it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of processing that you did within yourself just as a byproduct of like the conversations I was bringing home from therapy.
Yeah.
Like not intentionally, not like, oh, this is your homework. I did this. You should do it too. But just like I would talk about the things that I was experiencing and like what it was connected back to and what I was untangling and like where I was defining expectations and worth. And like the more deep I got into that and just like was willing to share it with you, like we were able then to secondhand therapy some of your stuff.
Well, it was so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It was extraordinarily fascinating to me. Like I wanted to take like psychology classes in college, but I never ended up being able to. It just didn't fit in my schedule. Like, because I think it's just a study of the mind.
Right.
And when you were coming home and talking about it, I was like, yeah. Get past the feelings. What did you do? Like, how did this work? Like, who, what, when, where, why, how? Like, oh, okay. And then like, how does this work over here? And blah, blah, blah. Listening to you talk about therapy, I was like infatuated with it because it was just like, here's a problem. Here's how you solved it. And even if you didn't solve it, like, oh, we're getting through it. Or
I mean,
like you're working through a problem. It's all problem solving. And that's how my brain works. And so it's like, I'm watching you work through a problem and it's from somebody else. And so like, I want to hear how you're working through this problem. I really don't care about the end result. I only care about the process of working through the problem. Yeah.
That was a hard time too.
Yeah, it was really hard on you, but I was excited because like you're coming home from therapy, like what am I going to learn today? But you're like, oh, I'm just emotionally drained. I don't even want to talk about it. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll wait. Maybe tomorrow. Don't forget any details. And then like you would say stuff, and then I'd be like, oh, okay. And then like I'd process it and think about it, and like, oh, how does this work over here, and how does this correlate to this and that? And so that was really interesting for me.
How did that experience change me?
I don't know. You're still weird. You are much more at peace, which obviously regulates me and the kids. I would say that it's definitely calmed our house considerably. Still opposed from today's.
I mean, here's the thing though. There's always going to be case. But what's interesting is like even over the past week or whatever, like we can now specifically see why things are happening.
Yeah.
And like without divulging any information, like I can be like, there's this factor, this factor, this factor, this factor, and this factor that's affecting this kid in this way. And this is how they're reacting. And like some of that is within our ability to control. Some of it is going to correct itself in itself. Like I know that there are so many situations over the past week where I would have reacted differently without that deeper understanding
knowledge,
and in a way that would have been a detriment to our relationship.
This is 100% true. Especially with our kids.
Yeah.
Like you see them respond and react one way, and then you're like instantly like part of me is angered. But then once I'm like able to like not respond and think about it and process it, I'm like, oh, these kids are like actually starving.
Yes, that's half the battle half the time.
Right? Like, oh, let's feed them, and then by golly, in 10 minutes later they're completely different. But that's
and then
just
we
like
can talk about what actually just happened.
But that's I know very like, surface level of what you just said though.
Yeah, but like if we had gone back to the way we would have handled that 8 years ago, it would have just been so different. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And so
you going through therapy and help understand how your brain works kind of helped me understand how my brain was so much different.
Yeah.
Oh, you obviously don't see the situation the same way that I do. Even though we did all the Enneagram stuff, all right?
Yeah.
Oh, my brain works so different than yours. And now, okay, your brain works this way. Okay, now I see one of our kids doing the same thing. Okay, their brain works a little bit more similar to you. Like in this situation, their brain is responding the same way that your brain used to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense.
Like, what do they need?
Yeah.
How can I help them co-regulate?
Yeah.
And then address like whatever the situation that needs to be addressed that half the time doesn't even need to when they're not in a heightened state of emotion.
Correct.
I'm really proud of us for that. And we are not perfect. My gosh, I need to say we are so not perfect. The number of times we looked at each other today like, oh dear, good Lord.
Yeah, it's been a hard week. But it's just the week after school and the first week of summer for us.
Well, and like, here's what I know. There is always going to be hard things.
Yeah. And so like, instead of being mad about the hard things, it's just, how do we work through the hard things?
Yeah, like our entire house flooded.
Oh yeah, that was no big deal. Just put your head down and work.
No big deal. But like, would we have handled it the same way 10 years ago?
No. Have we been married 10 years?
We will have been married 10 years. Our 10-year anniversary is in 2 months.
Oh,
3
then-
months? 2 months.
So we didn't have kids and we didn't have...
Well, yeah. But
Oh.
still.
Oh yeah, we might have handled it the same way. I'm just joking. Yeah, how about you go and say like 6 years ago, 4 years ago?
We would have gone straight to the bar. That's what we would have done
4
10 years ago.
If you would have said 4 years ago, no,
4
we
years.
would not have handled it. We wasn't capable of it.
Yeah.
The house flooding was really a very physical thing, and it was easy for me.
For you.
For me.
It was very
Emotional for you when you were
mentally and
tearing down,
emotionally draining for me.
Yeah, when you were tearing down the Christmas tree while we're packing up boxes.
Yeah, that was really emotional.
Yeah, that was really hard for you. And I was just like, hurry up and get the Christmas tree done so we can move stuff out of this room.
Yeah.
But like, for me, it's just put your head down, tear it up, clean it up, get the water out. Okay, boom, done. All right, next, let's go order everything, get everything in, and start putting everything back.
Yeah.
Really, when we got stuck in the cabin for 2 months.
Wait, you mean you didn't like our whole family sleeping in bunk beds for 2 months?
Right next to each other with a brand new baby. That was hard, but at the same time, when you're tearing down the house at home and working on the house, okay, when I was leaving our house and going back to the cabin with the kids, it wasn't like, oh, whoa, man, this is horrible. And oh my gosh, and like, this is despair. It was all like, hey, we got all this stuff done and like, we're working towards it. And this stuff is coming in. And
yeah.
And when we were with the kids, it was very much like, oh, hey, look at all this fun things that we get to do at the cabin that we don't get to do at our house or at Mimi and Papa's. And like, we stayed up and played games with the kids.
Yeah.
And we made that environment at the cabin like, this is a special time at the cabin. Mm-hmm. We're going to stay up and do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
We have this opportunity. We're going to play games that we've never played before. We played Sorry and
742 times, like, at least.
Past bedtime with some of the kids, had their own little corner, play Legos and dolls and stuff. And like, and we just kept them up because we were up and moving.
Yeah.
Like we never sat around and like dwelt on like, oh, woe is me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's a little bit of, we taught them a lot about problem solving, and we taught, like, when you say that, I don't want it to sound like we were dismissive. Like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's perfect. There was a lot of sitting with a lot of really hard feelings because it was like arguably one of the hardest things they've ever been through. Yeah. They now joke like, oh man, we just wish we would have gone back and turned off the water. And what if we can magically snap our fingers and have the whole house be put back together?
Yeah,
and
wouldn't that be fun?
Like we did a lot of processing with them and like
and
helping them understand and sitting with like the very real, scary, hard feelings around it. But also like, okay, how do we sit with ourselves, acknowledge where we're at, be in the hard, and also continue to take steps to move forward?
Yeah.
Which is what I feel like we modeled in real time.
Yep.
How do we be here for each other? How do we acknowledge where we're at? And how do we continue moving forward?
I remember laying in bed with the little kids around me, them like crying, saying, I just want to go home. Because they were like, new place and it's dark. They're always scared.
Deer heads on the wall.
Deer heads on the wall. But like, I just want to go home. Like, they're obviously exhausted, and you're like, oh yeah, and just helping them work through that.
Mm-hmm. It was hard.
It was hard, but it was very intentional work that we did with the kids.
Yeah, very much so. All right, my dear love, what tips would you give other husbands on how to support their wives with big dreams? This is straight from the question box.
It's so situationally dependent, but it's also at the same time not. Here's one thing that has changed with you. Through pregnancies, through kids, through personal growth, through your whole journey, you have kind of found, is it intuition or gut feeling? Mm-hmm. Okay, so like you have gut feelings and like you feel with like your body.
Yeah.
And I think with my head. Mm-hmm. And so it's very easy for me to dismiss you because
rationally it doesn't make sense.
Because rationally it doesn't make sense. Logic and facts are going to trump everything that you're feeling. Oh, I feel this, I feel that. I'm like, well, I don't care what you feel. This is the facts. Make your decision based off the facts.
Right.
Like is how my brain works. Like, do this, don't do that. Like it's kind of cut and dry.
Yeah.
And feelings tend to muddy the waters.
For you.
For me. But there's been times in our life that you're like, you have felt that something wasn't right or wasn't a good idea. And I steamrolled and said, no, I'm right. I'm logically right. Yeah. And I mean, obviously looking back, but that was early into our relationships. Yeah. And
well, I was disconnected from my intuition.
You were very disconnected, but as you got more connected and made good choices. And I saw those choices and I'm like, oh, I hate to admit it, but like she's making much better choices because you were much more connected. And I've seen that and I watch that we make decisions now that I would never ask you. Now if you have a question, hey, this or that, and be like, I don't know, what's your gut say? Like now I'm like, I'm going to use that and weigh that in as a factor, as a big factor on what your gut says.
Yeah. And I recorded an episode about this, but you reminded me of that a couple of months ago. You're like, every time that you have had a gut instinct, trusted your intuition, it has always worked out so much better than when you start overthinking something.
Yeah.
Every time I overthink it, try to overanalyze it, like get caught up in my head, I freeze.
Yeah. You can't do that. You get caught with the deer.
Totally freeze. Yeah.
And so getting you back to just your initial gut reaction. Okay. Boom. There you go. And so that's helped.
Yeah.
That's definitely helped as being a light. I'm not saying it's the light to always follow, but it's definitely a light.
Well, what I hear you saying is like understanding that the way you and your partner are going to process things are going to be different and one isn't necessarily right or wrong.
Correct.
And I think that there's a really high level of trust that has to come with it.
Yeah.
And I see this a lot with like Enneagram 6s, for example. They really need to feel safe in order to do something. And so also like knowing what your partner needs in taking a risk. Like, for example, with us, it was like, oh, if we're going to, give this our best shot for however extended period of time. And like, if it does not trend that it's going to work out, like, what's the backup plan? And a lot, I think, of partners feel safety in like, okay, like, here's what you want to do. And if that doesn't work, how are we going to continue to feel safe?
I think the other thing is if it doesn't work out, so what?
Yeah.
We'll solve the problem and we'll fix it and we'll move on to the next thing. Like,
so much of what we know to be true is like literally just a construct of our imagination.
Yeah.
Well, really what is real.
Take everything that the kids are scared of when they go to sleep at night.
Yeah.
It's all figments of imagination.
Yeah. But we do the exact same thing and call it.
Exactly.
Call it taxes.
Call it taxes?
But it's so like we put so much fear in the unknown and like, what if everything crumbles in front of us? And it's like, well,
okay, so what?
Okay, if it does, maybe it's the best thing that ever happened to you. And also like,
put your head down and move forward.
Yeah. Figure there is always another plan. Anyone who's listening to this podcast is a fully capable, functional person able to bring anything that they want to life or figure out the alternative of the next right step.
And that's also another thing that you have learned through entrepreneurship. It's sink or swim.
Absolutely.
You have a roadblock. Okay. Are you going to sit and dwell in the roadblock? Or are you, sometimes, that's fine. But then at the end of the day, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Absolutely. Well, and the craziest thing about entrepreneurship is it forces you into personal growth.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's you versus you. In every other one of my careers, I was able to indirectly, like, hide behind the team or the job or the role or the organization. Like, when it is you, every limiting belief, every piece of your stuff that comes up, it is like, you have to be willing to sit with that.
Yeah.
And work through it. And I think that is true no matter what goals or dreams you're working on. That's not exclusive to entrepreneurship.
No.
Like when it was me training for my first half marathon, it was like, you either do it or you don't. Right now, I'm training for a half marathon. I'm not. And it doesn't feel good. And it's me versus me.
Yeah. But like you had so much confidence from the other ones. For me, like confidence just rolls in from a past experience.
Absolutely. But I'm like going into my half marathon, like free balling it. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. You got it.
You build resiliency. And that's like,
confidence
sometimes you can never have it all figured out.
No, you don't.
Like the more you think you have it all figured out, like the more you're progressing. I don't know.
Why would you want to have it all figured out?
That's a good point. Like the only way you figure it out is to keep moving forward.
The only way.
So I think a lot, when I try to advise or guide couples coming up upon this is like, you have to have enough conversations that there is some amount of emotional safety. So it doesn't feel quite like you're falling off the deep end.
So
but like there also has to be a high level of trust of like, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be okay.
That's literally the answer to what did I feel about you quitting your job and starting this?
Absolutely.
We had already had enough trust. Mm-hmm. Well, we had baby trust. What?
Baby trust?
Oh gosh. The trust is way different than was then.
I guess so.
But like I already had enough trust into you that you will sink or swim and figure it out or you won't.
Yeah. I think you have more faith in me than I did.
Yeah. There was definitely days that I had more faith in you than you did.
Yeah.
But no, I was there for you.
Yeah.
You were going to figure it out or you weren't. But it was also fun to watch your confidence grow. you were like so excited about little things. And I was like, you're like, I made $300 today. It was like, I just filled a grain contract for like $30,000. And you were like, give me a sad face. And I was like, but good job. But no, it was your confidence and gut instinct and other things. Yeah, you completely changed through this journey. And I think entrepreneurship does that for a lot of people that are built to withstand it. And resilient, well, adversity builds resiliency.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that more importantly, we just want to build resilient kids. Because like life always going to be hard.
Absolutely.
And so you don't want a soft, easy life. That sounds boring and horrible. You want
the more soft and easy things become, the more you sink into complacency, which is where
a lot of problems arise.
For a lot of people, maybe some people like that. For me, it turns into
sit and dwell
boredom.
Yeah.
Which turns into my own personal, like, you know what?
So yeah, you want to build resilient kids. And so you give them small, hard things and just work through it.
Well, I think it's really, really cool and important to watch them or have them watch us in real time, build those muscles.
Yeah.
You know, like when our oldest was really struggling with anxiety and fear of the unknown and people, things like that. And I talked about like how scary it was sometimes to get up on stage or to do something new, or, you know, when I'm working on a project and I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, like I shared that with them because it's important for them to see.
Go do hard things.
Go do hard things. Okay. Someone wants to know why you cut your hair.
I was over it. The real reason is because we were finishing up soybean harvest, which is just dusty, blowing the combine off at night, coming home late. Sometimes the kids were asleep. Sometimes they weren't.
Yeah.
Which would have been way past their bedtime.
Way past their
bedtime. I
was only 8,000 weeks pregnant.
You were 8,000 weeks pregnant. The house was wrecked.
Yep.
And I would come in, take a shower, and just rinse it off. So now you just got all that dust in it. Just rinse it off because you got to get all this soybean dust off of you. And then I didn't brush it because then I turned around and picked up the house and put the kids to sleep and blah, blah, blah. And like, so I didn't brush it for like 2 weeks and the hair was just like, matted. And so it took me an hour and a half to comb it out. And at that moment, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. This is
great because the baby would be pulling on it.
It ran its course. And then we had the baby. And then I also realized that my hair was always either up or hidden behind a hat. And every time that like I would get someplace, it would get in my face and I'd hate it. And then I got on a creeper on the concrete and I got stuck in the creeper wheel as I like pushed back and oh gosh, that was horrible. And so then I'm changing this baby infant that was like a week old. And as I'm leaning my head down to change this baby's diaper in the middle of the night, my hair is just in my face and I'm done. It ran its course. It was great. I loved it for what it was. Never going back.
Like every single time I take a picture of you on stories, someone's like, "Oh my God, Andrew cut his hair." I'm like, that was like 6 months ago.
I'm not going back.
You're not going back? I mean, I did like it, but I do like your hair short.
But it lived its course. It ran its life. It's done.
Okay, speaking of baby.
Okay.
We have another one of those.
Yeah. How
has this experience been different than the first 2 times?
Well, what started off with nothing but fear and borderline anxiety has been this little bundle of
awesome.
Dangerous awesome.
Dangerous?
She's dangerous.
She's so cute.
She's very cute and easygoing.
Yeah.
So far. But she has been great. Watching the kids with her has been so much fun.
So special.
It has really, I think, slowed both of us down.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been wonderful.
It really, like last year in my business, forced me to slow down.
Yeah.
And to be more intentional. Gosh, in every sense of the term.
I knew that like when I look back on our second, and I don't remember like the first 2 years of her life, and I'm like, oh, I missed half of my first kid's life, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I have a chance to really make this connection, not only with the third, but like try to go back and rebuild those bonds with the kids that I just wasn't there for.
Yeah.
And so that was very intentional as well. It's not been easy, but it's intentional. But she's dangerous. She's dangerous because I asked if I could get a vasectomy and be done with this. And it was like, I haven't decided.
Meanwhile, in labor.
Yeah, you were screaming, go downstairs and get a vasectomy now.
Find someone with a rusty pair of scissors.
Yeah.
Mind you, this was also my first birth without an epidural. So,
yeah. But I was like, are you done? And you're like, are you done? Can we make this official yet? Are we done? And you're like, as you smell the baby's head, and you're
oh
like,
my God, she is so cute.
Oh, man, I might want another one.
But I feel like everything about this experience is different. Like
everything.
In so many ways, the pregnancy was harder on my body, just being older. But I also just knew so differently how to take care of myself. And the postpartum experience was so different this time around.
I must say that the postpartum has been a major thing. That is a major difference.
Yeah.
A major difference. Like for our second one, I at least like knew what postpartum depression was and also was like sort of ready to kind of like maybe help you a little bit. But like at least I knew you were going through it.
Yeah.
I didn't know why you were lashing out at me the first time, but like I kind of knew, oh, this time I was ready. And then you didn't have as much.
No. Well, this time I just feel like, first of all, I had so many different tools in my toolbox. I was in a completely different mental emotional state.
That's very true.
I had done so much work in healing that I could recognize when I was dysregulated. Like I said, for both of us, like there was just so much less we took personally. Like the first time we were just so afraid.
Yeah. No,
we didn't know that we were, but it was like, here's this like new baby and like everything is different and like it's so hard. We don't know what we're doing. And like, obviously we're both doing it wrong, you know? And this time it was like when I could feel that I was starting to feel a different way, like I knew it and you knew it and it didn't mean anything about either one of us. It was just like, my hormones are going bonkers right now.
And I didn't take it personally, which I took the other ones personally.
Yeah. And then our house flooded.
But which probably in the long run actually helped bond us closer and tighter together because we were focused on distracted by so many other things.
There was great because we were home.
So if you want to have a good marriage,
great postpartum,
and a great postpartum, you know, have a tragedy.
Yeah, no, I distinctly remember at one point, I don't know, this was a few weeks in because we were starting to put stuff back together in the house and you had gotten her to sleep and you were holding her and you were like, can I set her down? And I was like, okay, good luck. And you're like, it's just really hard to get things done when you're holding a baby. I can never really get through my to-do list. And I was like, yes.
I think that has been...
Yes.
I think that is the quote of this entire baby.
Yeah. I mean, there has been times that it's been really hard for me, but like, yeah, our house flooding and you having to physically work in our home, we really had to, what's the give and take? Because we both have things on our agenda that have to get done. And how do we have conversations around what that looks like? Which is what we are still doing because LOL childcare.
But there's a whole lot less resentment.
Yeah, it's more of a conversation.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you have this that you need to do. I have this that I need to do. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you might not get everything done. I might not get everything done, but at least we get both of it.
Well, we have gotten a lot more comfortable prioritizing.
And some days you have days that you get to focus on everything, and then I have days that I get to go focus on things.
Yeah. It's not perfect.
But I think that was like one of the biggest things about marriage, that marriage is supposed to be 50-50. Screw that. That's horrible advice.
It's terrible.
Marriage is 100%, 0%, 75-25, 50-50.
Ever in between.
60-40, and it's constantly fluctuating and changing.
Well, and that is where I feel like we have grown among everything else we've talked about with the most, even just in terms of like running a household.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel good about the way we take care of things together.
I still trip over boxes that you just throw in the breezeway.
Well, duh. What else do you want me to do with them? I have a baby in my arms.
Take 4 more steps.
Okay. So it's not perfect. All right, Andrew. What is your favorite? We are both supposed to answer. What are your favorite part of farm life?
Freedom.
Yeah,
freedom of time and freedom of resources.
I've lived a lot of different versions of my life. Not in crazy drastic, but like medium-sized small town, like close to a city, in more suburban-ish area. Like I've lived a lot of different, bopped around the state of Illinois, several different places. And there is like nowhere else I'd rather raise my family than on the farm.
Yeah. Peaceful.
Yeah. There's just
chaotic freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. I mean, there's just the way that our whole family is involved, the way that I look outside and I see green. Like I don't mind being as far away we are from town. Like it's semi-inconvenient sometimes with the idea of like living in a neighborhood. Oh,
No, yeah.
even our kids now are like, oh, why do people choose this? And I love just that we have like such a close connection to the seasonality of life. Like on the farm, there is a winter where nothing grows and it is quiet.
Hey,
and
my
it is,
cover crops are growing.
you know what I mean? And there is a dormancy to it. And there may be some things sprouting, but it is quiet and is internal and it is dark. And then there's this season of like new life and seeds being planted and, you know, things being literally put in the ground and other things starting to flourish. And then there's this season of growing and like seeing the beauty and enjoying the fruits of our labor and like having fulfillment in that. And then there is like, you know, reaping the harvest.
Yeah.
And that is so indicative of the seasons of life we go through, the seasons of marriage, of motherhood, of business, fatherhood, but all of the above, right? Like I think we, for so long, we have been conditioned to always be in a state of summer, always being uber fruitful and productive and, you know, our best, most radiant self. And I have learned a lot over the past specifically 4 years, like how much beauty there is in understanding, embracing all the seasons and how necessary it is to go through them all in order for something else to be possible. So I love that. And I love that our kids get to see that and they have like a very concrete representation of like what it means to show up and do something and then have something to show for it. Like now, especially because they're 5 and 7, they are at the age where they know why you are planting, why you are harvesting. And so when you're not with them, they can see the bigger picture and they're a part of it. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's really hard when they're like 18 months old or 3 and they like understand, but they don't understand. Like they have a respect for it that I think is really beautiful.
They are coming into really fun ages.
Oh, so fun. Every year that they get older, I'm reminded why I taught 4th graders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of fun. A lot more fun.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew.
Are you going to ask me the personal growth question?
What does personal growth look like for you in this season?
So I have 2 answers, and they're both short and sweet. Put your head down and keep moving forward. And the second one is going out of your comfort zone.
Ooh.
And being okay with being uncomfortable.
Ooh. What does that look like?
Me being on this podcast.
Okay, fair. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being here. I wouldn't be recording this podcast without you. So I appreciate you coming on.
Stay tuned.
For what?
I don't know. For episode 200. When I make my debut, my
Your
second
grand re-debut.
Yeah.
That'd be like 2 years from now.
Okay,
cool.
See you then.
Beautiful. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm so forever grateful for you.
Bye.
Have I told you today how much I appreciate you? I'd like to imagine this was a meaningful backyard patio kind of chat between friends sipping LaCroix at sunset. If you enjoyed today's show, please take a screenshot to share or forward this episode to a friend. You can also find me at Emily Rushell over on social to continue the conversation. It's truly a joy to hear what tidbits and takeaways made an impact on your day. As always, all links and resources mentioned in today's episode can be found in the show notes listed below or over at emilyrushell.com. Special thanks to my podcast manager, Jill Carr, for the time and love she puts into producing Gathering Growth for this community. What a blessing it is to be on this personal growth journey together. Forever grateful for you.